Have you ever just been completely stopped in your tracks by a piece of music? A song that just seems to reach right inside you and pull out a feeling you didn't even know was there? It's something we've all felt, but if you really stop and think about it, it's kind of weird. How can these simple vibrations in the air unlock our deepest, most personal emotions? Well, that's what we're going to dive into. So, this is the big question, isn't it? It's the mystery that's had philosophers, scientists, and probably every musician ever scratching their heads for centuries. And we're not just talking about tapping your foot to a catchy beat. We're talking about why a symphony can make you cry, or why a certain chord change can fill you with this sense of hope that you can't even put into words. This question really gets to the core of what it means to be human. I love this quote from the filmmaker Ingmar Bergman. He just nails that sense of awe, right? He saw music as this uniquely human gift, like a tool that lets us visit these other worlds, these worlds made of pure feeling, of shared memories, of things we understand without needing words. I think that really sets the stage perfectly for what we're about to explore. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to come at this from a few different angles. We'll start with the big mystery itself, then get a little philosophical about sound and meaning. We'll look at the weird psychological puzzle of why sad music can feel amazing. Then we'll literally peek inside your brain on music. And finally, we'll zoom out and see how music works as this incredible social glue. So, first things first. Let's just take a moment to really appreciate how deep this mystery goes. Because honestly, the more you think about it, the weirder and more wonderful it all becomes. I mean, let's just break it down to the physics. Music is just organized sound waves. That's it. Little compressions of air hitting your eardrum. From a pure survival standpoint, it makes no sense. It doesn't find you food. It doesn't build you shelter. It has no obvious purpose. And yet, these seemingly random vibrations can stir up everything from pure joy to the most profound grief. How does a physical thing become such a powerful psychological experience? That is the mystery. To even begin to get a handle on that, we've got to put on our philosopher hats for a minute. See, before we can ask how music moves us, we have to get really clear on what music is in the first place. Is it just sound, or is it something more? Something we actually help create with our minds? This is where it gets really interesting, thanks to the philosopher Roger Scruton. He makes this brilliant distinction. Over on the left, you have acoustic sound. That's just a physical thing happening out in the world. But on the right, you have a musical tone. And a tone, Scruton says, isn't just a sound. It's an experience we create in our minds when we listen in a certain way. We're not just hearing a frequency, we're hearing a note in relation to other notes. It's the jump from just hearing a noise to actively listening to music. And this quote just captures it perfectly. When sound gets organized into rhythm, something magical happens. We don't just hear a pattern. We feel a pulse. Like Scruton says, it feels like our own life speaks to us through the sound. The beat of the music hooks into the beat of our own heart, the rhythm of our breathing. That external sound suddenly becomes part of our internal, living world. Let's make this super concrete. So on the left, you've got a bit of music from Wagner. You don't even have to be able to read music to see it looks tense. It's full of these unresolved, yearning notes that just create this feeling of tragedy. Now, look at the right. This is from Mendelssohn. He's using a lot of the same notes, but by arranging them differently, by resolving the tension, he creates this feeling of total peace, like a serene landscape. The physical sounds are super similar, but the intentional arrangement of the tones creates two completely different emotional worlds. That's the difference between sound and music. Okay, so music is meaningful. Got it. But this leads us to another really fascinating puzzle, one that psychologists love. It's all about the strange and sometimes contradictory relationship between the emotions in the music and the emotions that we actually feel when we listen. I mean, think about it. In real life, feeling sad or tragic is awful. It's painful. It's something we usually try to avoid at all costs. And yet, we'll happily put on a playlist of our favorite sad songs and find the experience deeply moving, comforting, and sometimes even pleasurable. So what is going on there? Why don't we feel genuinely terrible when we listen to music that sounds so sad? Well, the key concept here is something called vicarious emotion. When we listen to music, we experience the emotion at a safe distance. We're not actually in any danger. We haven't actually lost anything. This distance lets us appreciate the beauty and the complexity of an emotion like sadness without being crushed by the real-world baggage that usually comes with it. It's kind of like emotion in a simulator. All of the feeling, none of the cost. And get this, a study back in 2013 showed this perfectly. Researchers played sad-sounding music for people. Now, look at the first bar on the chart. People rated the perceived tragic emotion really high. They all agreed, yep, this music sounds tragic. But then, look at the second bar. The felt tragic emotion was way lower. They didn't actually feel that sad themselves. And here's the real kicker, the third bar. They actually reported feeling more pleasant emotions like romance and happiness. So we can hear one emotion in the music, but feel something else entirely.
So this whole psychological paradox is fascinating, right? But how does it actually work, biologically? To figure that out, we have to go from the mind to the brain and look at the actual wiring that makes this incredible connection between sound and feeling possible.
Here's the big takeaway from neuroscience. Listening to music is not a passive thing at all. When music hits your ears, your brain doesn't just sit back and process the sound. It actively simulates the physical movements that would be needed to create that sound. It's like your brain is secretly playing along, even when you're sitting perfectly still. One of the most basic ways this happens is through something called entrainment. It's simply our body's natural tendency to sync up with an external rhythm. It's why it's almost impossible not to tap your foot or nod your head to a good beat. Our own internal biological clocks literally lock onto the music's pulse. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a direct physical connection between our nervous system and the sound.
Now, let's add another amazing piece to the puzzle: mirror neurons. These are incredible brain cells. They fire when, say, a monkey grabs a banana. But here's the wild part. The exact same neurons fire when that monkey just watches another monkey grab the banana. This is basically the brain's empathy circuit. It lets us understand and feel what someone else is doing as if we were doing it ourselves.
So let's put it all together. Here's how we feel music. First, our brain hears the music not as abstract sounds, but as the result of human movement. Someone drawing a bow across a violin or singing a note. Second, our mirror neurons fire up, creating an inner imitation of those physical actions. And third, this is the magic step. That internal simulation in our brain triggers the very emotions associated with those physical movements. We feel the tension in the musician's arm, we feel the release of a final chord. And what's absolutely incredible is that a philosopher named Theodore Lipps basically called this almost 100 years before scientists ever discovered mirror neurons. He said empathy is just inner imitation. And that is exactly what our brains are doing with music. We are empathizing with the gestures captured in the sound, and by doing that, we get to feel the emotion too. Okay, so we've gone from philosophy to psychology, all the way down to our brain cells. For our last step, let's zoom the camera all the way back out and see how all of this comes together to explain music's most ancient and maybe most important job, bringing us together. We're back to Roger Scruton for this last big idea. Think about things like dancing together, or marching in time, or even a crowd clapping in unison. There's no real practical point to it, but we get this deep pleasure from just moving in sync with other people. Scruton calls this functionless coordination, and he says it's a pure expression of our social nature. And music, he argues, is the ultimate version of this. Music is the ultimate shared journey. We all tap our feet to the same beat. One sociologist called it a quasi-simultaneity, which is a fancy way of saying we get to share a moment in time. When you listen to a piece by Bach, you are, in a very real way, sharing an experience with him, following his train of thought step by step across 300 years. Music melts away our sense of being alone and makes us feel like part of a bigger community. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If music's deepest power is social bonding, this act of moving and feeling together, what does it mean that today, with our headphones and our streaming services, so much of our listening happens alone? Does the music still connect us to that wider human family, or is it becoming something else? It's something to think about the next time you hit play.